This short presentation was filmed on Thursday, September 19th as the first half of our Art of Antique Appraisals program. The second half of the program featured guests bringing their own personal items for guest speakers George Glastris and Keith Zaransky to appraise. The History Center looks forward to welcoming George and Keith back to Lake Forest in 2025. George Glastris has over 35 years of experience in the auction and estates business. Originally from St. Louis, Missouri, George spent his early career working in London, England, as a specialist at Christie's, Sotheby's, and Phillips auction houses, followed by 5 years as a director at Skinner's in Boston, Massachusetts. Over his career, George has developed expertise in a wide variety of antiques and collectible fields, specifically working with families to caringly and efficiently navigate the process of selling their personal possessions and valuables in a timely and transparent manner. Keith Zaransky is a North Shore jewelry and antique dealer with 35 years of experience and the founder of Winnetka Estate Buyers. Keith specializes in buying, selling, and researching vintage watches, jewelry, diamonds, fountain pens, antiques, and other rare objects. His work experience includes opening his first antique store in 1984 at age 19, and also setting up at dozens of antique and jewelry shows both in the USA and abroad. He was in charge of North and South American consignments for a Swiss auction firm in the 1990s and helped organize a watch show in London during the same time period. Keith has been actively buying and selling vintage watches since 1985 and also is the founding curator of the Sachs Pen Collection, the finest collection of vintage writing instruments in the world. And with that, please enjoy the presentation.
Thank you very much, George, for the invitation, and everybody, thank you for the show up. Very quickly, my bio. I started collecting antiques as a 10-year-old, and in a home where my mother considered anything that she didn't buy brand new as dirty. It was a difficult time bringing things home. At 22, right after I graduated from college, I interned at the Smithsonian and realized that if I wanted to work in the museum industry, I needed a PhD just to sweep the floors. I happened to, for very long story I won't get into, found myself living in London or in England, and through happenstance, I got an entry-level job at one of the London auction houses called Phillips, which no longer exists. It was absorbed by Bonhams, and worked my way up in the London auction galleries, the London auction rooms. And then as the internet was changing the face of the London auction rooms, I took a job in Boston so I could pursue one of my specialties, which was mechanical music and scientific instruments, as the market was moving from London, where it had historically been, to the US, where the money was, to be quite honest. And after a decade living in England with this accent, it was time to come home and cheer for the Cardinals. So before I begin, let me just ask a couple of questions of you all. How many of you are thinking about downsizing in the next few years? Or downsizing somebody else's property, Yeah, okay. So most of you are looking at that. Good, because that's really what I'm going to discuss appraisals, but what I'm going to discuss tonight is more appraising your things, finding out what you have, what's valuable, what's not, what's worth keeping, what's worth selling in today's not good antiques market. And how many of you were here a couple of months ago when Jay from Hinman Auctions, did any of you come to that talk he gave? Just one of you, really? Okay. Well, I'm going to be discussing Hinman Auctions quite a bit because they're the best in town. So let's start with you're thinking of downsizing. You've got to break up your home, and you have to decide what you have is valuable. And how many of you here have over your life bought, collected antiques of some kind? So a good amount of you. And how many of you have inherited antiques that you have? Yeah, that's what's happened. That's what happens. Well, the first thing you need to decide when you're deciding to move and downsizing is looking at all the furniture you have. And there is furniture that's valuable, furniture that's not valuable, but there's also furniture that works. And for those of you who have antique furniture, you probably realize that you don't spend a lot of time sitting on your good antique furniture because those are in the living room and for special occasions. When you're thinking of moving, you have to decide, will I be able to use this in 5 or 10 years? And the reason I say that is I was in a loft apartment of a couple who were moving to the Mather, and they had a lot of mid-century furniture, mid-century modern, which is very, very hot right now. And they had a chair by Corbusier that looked kind of like something that the astronauts sat in. And I said, oh, that's a great piece. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm not going to sell that. And for some reason, the filter in my brain wasn't working that day. And I said to the gentleman, yes, but are you going to be able to get in and out of it in 5 years' time? And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. And his wife, God love her, turned around, looked at him and said, what have I been telling you? What have I been telling you? She made him sell the chair. So you've got to decide what you're going to want to live with in your new home, because you'll probably just have one living room / family room / den. And do you really want to have all your good antiques that are not the most comfortable things in the world to sit in, what you want to take with you, or do you really want your favorite recliner? So that's one thing to look at. I always say combine your family room and your living room into one. So take your favorite, most comfortable pieces, but you're not going to be filling every seat in the room every day. So have one of your nice antique or fancy sofas there as well. Now, what else do you have that's going to be of value? If I go on house calls pretty much every week, and one of the two things that everybody seems to have that's of value is their silver. Now, there's silver sterling and silver plate. I'm talking about sterling. Some families, when they got married, got sterling silver place settings as wedding presents. Some were decided they didn't want to go that far and got silver plate. And of course, in your kitchen, you probably have stainless. I'm of the opinion that if you've had that silver for all of these years and you only used it twice a year, you have two choices. One, take it with you, but use it every day. Don't worry about putting it in the dishwasher. Don't worry about polishing it. You've had it. Use it, enjoy it, or sell it, because it's a chunk of money. It's going to be, depending upon how big it is, it could be $1,000, it could be $3,000, just sitting there depreciating in value against the stock market and inflation. But that's something you want to think about. When my mom moved house, she got rid of her stainless and used her wedding silver for the last, she lived at the Mather for the last 8 years of her life. She was eating off her wedding silver every day because I said, Mom, you've got to use it. The same goes for your wedding china. Unless you're one of the lucky people who picked out a pattern that still is popular with younger people, your wedding china is not going to be worth a great deal of money. Enjoy it. Use it. Stop using the ceramic dishware that you got at Jewel on sale, with your coupons back 30 years ago when they used to give dishes with every sack of groceries you bought. So again, if you have it, use it. Take it with you to your new home. Same with your glassware, your crystal. Use it and enjoy it on a daily basis. Now, when moving, you want to think to yourself, less is more. If you're even hesitating about take it with you, this is the time to sell it or to donate it or to pass it on to the next generation, which is why I'm going to now talk about family heirlooms. I just turned 60. My friend Keith here is going to be 60. He's younger than me, even though I look so much younger. Our generation and younger don't collect antiques. Try as we might, we can't get younger people into the sale rooms, into the auctions, into the dealer shops. And there's a reason for that. When I was starting out, when you were all collecting, we had 3 networks, a couple of VHS or VHF channels, a daily newspaper, a couple of news magazines, and that was about it. Nowadays, we have so much more to do with our free time. I like to say that back in our day, if you were interested in rock climbing, you had to drive out to the mountains to climb rocks. Now you go to the health club and they've got a rock climbing wall in the health club. And collecting has always been a hobby. We try to make it sound, oh, very academic, and oh, yes, the carving was done by this carver in the 1830s, but really it's just another hobby like model trains. Young people don't have the time or the inclination to put a lot of time, to put the time into collecting antiques that it needs. So this is an important time for you to pass on not just the pieces that you've purchased, but family heirlooms. Now, a lot of them are saying, I'm not interested. Family photos, family letters, family keepsakes. It may be the trunk that your great-grandparents brought over from the old country, your father's World War II uniform. All of these things should be kept in the family, and you need to push it on them. Don't take no for an answer. The next thing you need to go through at this point is your jewelry, and this is mostly for the ladies. This is the time, ladies, start making a list of what good jewelry you have, especially if it's heirloom jewelry. If it was your grandmother's watch or your grandmother's cameo brooch, make a list of it so that your daughters and granddaughters, who may not know that the brooch you wear on special occasions was their great-grandmother's. They may have forgotten. So make a list of what you have. If you want at this time to say, and to my eldest daughter, I leave this brooch, and to my eldest granddaughter, I leave this watch, you can do that now as well. Or ask them, which of my jewelry do you like and will want someday? It's not in the least bit wrong to do that now. Speaking of jewelry, I'm going to let Keith jump in quickly and explain what is valuable and what's not in jewelry and why.
Thank you, George. So my name is Keith Zaransky. I specialize in jewelry, watches, silver, fountain pens as well, and lighters. The North Shore, needless to say, for 150 years or so, people have been buying very expensive things. And maybe we don't see pocket watches being worn every day and fountain pens being used every day, but it's not unusual at all to come into an estate locally and in a drawer, the piece that the people think is not worth anything with a broken crystal on it and a beat up case is a pocket watch worth $10,000, let's say, or 1,000 or 500. But the whole point is eventually somebody other than yourselves is going to end up with this item. You deserve to be the one to get paid for it, not the person who goes to the garage sale and says, look what I bought for $5. So, what I do typically is, unlike George, who worked for auctions, I was the one who went to auctions and bought the stuff that was misidentified. I would go to, when I was younger, to estate sales. I would run ads. I would travel. I do buy ads. So what I tried to do was to kind of draw these items out, these wonderful items, get them restored, and sell them on to collectors. Also, as far as gold and silver go right now, you probably all heard, gold today, all-time high, silver $31 an ounce. A charm bracelet that was in scrap value $400 20 years ago is $2,000 today. And if somebody offers you $2,000 for some golden bracelet, it sounds like a lot of money, but you need to know who you're selling to and dealing with, because it may not be a lot of money. It may be a $4,000 in gold bracelet. So you need to be very careful on small items. And the great thing is, when you're settling an estate, you don't need to worry about the really small things right away. Those can go in a shoebox. Those can wait till your brain calms down and your emotions have calmed down and that house is on the market. So you maybe take those with you, but you need to be sure to get fair value and to talk to somebody about those items. And that's what I've been doing. I worked with an auction in Switzerland in the 90s and with a show in London. And for me, it's just the love of the game. I love the research, and I just love knowing all the collectors and seeing the great things.
The next area that you probably have in your home is artwork. And artwork is like any other market. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. And the best way to get those appraised is your phone camera and your tape measure, because you need to get those seen by a good auction firm. And they're going to want to know name on the, you're going to take a photo of the painting, take a photo of the back, take a photo of the signature, make sure it's readable, and measure it. But they don't want the measurement in the frame. They want the measurement of the image, and let them know this is the image size. And send it off to Leslie Hindman or some other reputable auction house and get it looked at. What else do you have in the house? Books and records. Everybody's basement has got bookshelves and shelves full of old records. I can assure you that 99 out of 100 books and records are worth very, very little. So don't sweat going, oh my God, I've got all these old books. I hope, there's got to be something valuable in it. It is so rare that I go into a home that doesn't have a book collector and find a rare or valuable book. It just doesn't happen. The type of book that is valuable is like a first edition of Steinbeck. Everybody's got of Mice and Men in their home, but it's their high school copy, not a first edition. Those were printed in small numbers and they're snatched up. They're off the market. Same with the record. We talk about nowadays how everybody's listening to vinyl, but if I said, a copy of the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street is valuable, yeah, it's probably a $10 record as opposed to a $1,000 record, because everybody got Exile on Main Street when it came out in 1972. Same with the Beatles. They were million sellers. They're not rare records. Clothing and textiles. If you bought couture clothing, you're in luck. There is a lot of money in couture. But off the rack, even by some of the better names, off the rack rarely has much of a value. Same with knitwear. Forget it. Knitwear is not a valuable collectible type of clothing. Does anybody here collect a specific area? Anybody camera collector or knife collector or something like that? Okay, you collect antique musical boxes. You don't want to send that just to any auction house. If and when you do, you need to send it to somebody who specializes. Any auction house can say, oh yeah, we could sell it. We sold a Regina 2 sales ago and we got $3,000 for it. Well, good for them, but what did they know about it? They put a photo up and a description and probably did it wrong, but, and got a reasonable price. You need to take your collection to a specific auction house, not just mom and pop auctions. So that's one thing you have to look at, is for if you have a collection, to make sure that that if you're handling it, you send it to the right auction house. Now, when you're breaking up your home, you're going to need help. And when you're going through this stuff, you have to decide who to involve, who not to involve. And this is where you use guilt and lay it on thick with your children and grandchildren, because they're the people you want involved. You want to get them into the house. If they're coming from out of town, make a weekend of it. Promise them baseball tickets, whatever it takes to get them into town. Promise the grandkids Six Flags. Believe it or not, the grandchildren are just as interested in what's in your house as your children. And I'll explain this in a way to prove it. When our mother moved from St. Louis to Chicago, I have a brother in Winnetka and a brother in DC, and I'm in Chicago. So our mother decided to move here. We got a weekend when the entire, all 3 sons, 2 wives, 5 grandchildren could be in St. Louis. And my brothers and I gathered all the stuff in the living room. We put up card tables, and I ran an auction. And I would basically pick something up and say, who wants this? and they would kind of jokingly compete against each other who wanted it. Well, the first thing I picked up was a little pin box that my mom usually kept on her dresser, but didn't want it anymore. And I didn't think anybody would want it. And I said, who wants this? And my, at the time, 18, 22-year-old goth niece said to her father, Dad, I want that. And my mother looked at her and said, Hope, why on earth do you want that? And she said, Yaya, Grandma, when I was a little girl, I played with that all the time. My mother got so emotional, she had to leave the room. And that's what went on for the whole weekend. Every piece that got picked up, all of a sudden memories would flood back. And my parents didn't have antiques. They didn't have valuable, but they had things in their house that I personally, because I've got a tainted eye, because I work in antiques, would think, oh, it's garbage, it's junk, nobody's going to want it. And I was finding my brothers, my sisters-in-law, my nieces and nephews were grabbing this stuff. And, it's in their homes now. And it's, oh, that was my parents, that was my grandmother's. And as my nieces and nephews get older, it's in their homes. It's in, their living rooms. And it's going down generation by generation the way it should do. So that's what you really want to do. You want to get your family involved. Let them have what they want. And we've got about 3 or 4 auction houses in Chicago that can handle what you probably have. And at the top, by far, is Leslie Hindman, or Hindman Auctions, it's now called since Leslie sold the company. Hindman Auctions, I love them. They handle, but they're very particular on what they sell. I hate to use the word curate their auctions a lot more than they did just 5 years ago. A kind of a rule of thumb they have, if it takes 2 people to move it, it's got to be worth $1,000 before they'll take it. There's another auction house that I use quite a bit that is really the opposite end of the scale, and it's called Direct Auctions. And they're in West Rogers Park on the north side. Now, they look awful from the outside, and in fact, they look pretty bad on the inside. But they've been recently getting better things and getting better prices. For years, they wouldn't go on the internet. Now every auction is online, and I can tell you something. I used to make money buying. I'm not a dealer, but I'm not an idiot. And I would see rare pieces there going for $100, put my hand up, and sell it for $3,000. And I know Keith, as a dealer, has did that more times than he's had hot dinners. You can't do that anymore. You can't do that anymore. Things don't sneak through direct like they used to. So that's a good place for, things that Hinman won't take, Direct will. If you have modern, design, mid-century modern furniture, if you have Art Nouveau, arts and crafts furniture, so basically high design furniture and fine art, the Wright Toomey Gallery. Toomey and Wright are 2 different auction houses that merged a few years back, and they're down in the city as well. They do an amazing job. I sell, whenever I get mid-century modern from clients, it goes straight to Wright Toomey. And finally, this is probably won't apply to this group because we're on the far north side. There's Leonard Auctions out in Addison. But if you know somebody who lives out in the southwest suburbs, Leonard is the local auction house there. Other places you can try using are eBay. But eBay isn't what it was just 5 or 10 years ago when it was all auctions. It's now buy it nows. And as the market is contracting, it's getting harder and harder to sell things on eBay. Might find estate sales to be useful, although I'm more of I believe that estate sales are the blind leading the blind. Donations, there's a lot of places that you can donate, especially household furniture and household goods too. Up here, you have Village Treasure House in Winnetka, Northbrook. Wonderful place, and the money and the profits go to charity. So there is that. And very briefly, what I do is I'm a broker. As George said, I basically do the work for you. And if you're interested to know more about what I do and how I do it and how you can do it, if you want to do it yourself, 2-3 times a year, I teach a course at New Trier Extension on, it's called very simply, how to sell your stuff. And I go into what we've talked about tonight, but in a 3-week course on how to take photos to send to the auction houses, how to use eBay, what is valuable, what isn't, what's the difference between silver and silver plate, what type of jewelry, what type of watches, how do you tell the difference between a Georgian chair and a reproduction chair? The kind of things that we can't get into tonight because of time. Please do take the course if you're at all interested. And again, it's Nutria Extension 2 or 3 times a year, usually spring, sometimes summer and autumn. But my job is basically I'm a broker for you. I go in, I say, right, these pieces need to go to Hinman, or this piece needs to go to Christie's, New York. I've hand carried things to England for auction for clients. And I basically do the work for you. So that's me in a nutshell. And then I help you get rid of the leftovers. I can put you in touch with donation, estate sale, whatever you need.